You might have heard the advice or read it in the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, to become genuinely interested in the other person. But how do you actually do that? How do you do that without faking it? Well, this is how. You do it by asking the other person deep questions, asking them questions that you actually want to know about them, and getting into these deep conversations. Let me tell you the story about how I found out about the importance of deep questions. I think I first heard about it in one of Hamza's videos. He's a great YouTuber. And one time I was sitting with my girlfriend at a restaurant, and I was thinking to myself, why not use that advice that I heard about in his video? So I decided to ask her some deep questions about our relationship, about our future together, how she looks at this or that. And then we went on, going back and forth, asking each other some deep questions. And that's when it really hit me, like how important these kind of harder conversations, these deeper conversations are to deepening your relationship, to actually knowing the other person. They are essential. Like if you want to deepen your relationships, you gotta ask some deep questions. And I just felt great after that. And I also did this with my friends. I started asking them some deep questions, talking about some deeper stuff. And what I realized is when I asked these questions, like why did you do that? Why did you start doing that? This and that, asking some deep questions, they seem to be way more interested in the conversation. And they seem to enjoy it a lot more also, talking about this deeper stuff. And it just also helps to build a much stronger friendship. So my advice for this video, what I've learned and what I want to share with you, is to not be afraid to ask deep questions. Because it is through deep questions that you level up your relationships. It is through them, through deep questions and hard conversations, that you deepen your relationship. And I'm not just talking about like romantic relationships, any kind of relationships with anyone that you have. Deep questions will 100% deepen it. And the other thing is that if you actually want to stand out on a first date or the first time you meet someone, I think it's way better to go into the deep even on the first date, even the first time you meet someone, to start asking them some deep questions. Because, like, to be honest, no one really cares about these shallow questions like, do you have any pets? Or do you have any siblings? Or what do you like more, coffee or tea? Like, me at least, and I'm guessing you probably and a bunch of other people would much rather talk about some deeper stuff. Not about these shallow questions. Like I would much rather get into actually knowing them and actually asking them some deep questions about what they think about the world and everything. Questions like, what are you afraid of? What was the most beautiful experience that you ever had, or the most painful one? I mean, I'm not sure if this is just me, and you can probably relate also, but I'm just much more absorbed in the conversation when we're actually talking about something deep, something very personal and stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying to only ask deep questions. I think it's good to have a mixture of both. These shallow questions and deep questions also. What will happen when you ask these deep questions the first time you meet is that they will remember you. You will stand out because you don't really meet a lot of people who go into the deep waters the first time they meet someone. And just imagine this, like, let's say you're on a first date with someone, like, who will this girl remember more? The guy who asked her questions like, what is your favorite TV show or something like that? Or the guy who asked some deep questions, who actually wanted to know who is sitting in front of me right now? Who asked questions like, what was your childhood like? Or some deep questions. And the other thing is that you'll actually become more interesting. And not only that, you'll actually start becoming more interested in the other person. As we said in the beginning of the video, the way to follow that advice, to become genuinely interested in other people, is by asking deep questions. And there's this great loop that by asking deep questions, you're more interested in the other person. And when you're more interested in the other person, you want to ask even more questions. So you just get into this great loop. And now you might have this idea that when you first meet someone, it will seem weird when you ask these deep questions. Like, you will come across as a weird guy. Like, what is this guy doing? Well, maybe some people will react that way, but you gotta ask yourself, what would you rather talk about? Would you rather have these shallow conversations or these deep conversations? And if you would rather have the deep conversations, then wouldn't you want to have people around you who also want to have deep conversations? And the way that you do that is by being the initiator and asking deep questions. And if there are people who don't like that, well, you didn't even want to be friends with them in the first place. Because you want people who also like getting into the deeper stuff. And if they don't like that, that's their problem. If they think that you're weird because you ask deep questions, that's none of your business. Their opinion about you, none of your business. That's their business, that's their problem. And you will see that it might be a little uncomfortable asking these deep questions if you're not used to it, but you will get used to it fast. Now, it's very important to say that you don't want to force deep questions. You should never force these kind of questions. Of course, you don't want to make the other person feel uncomfortable by asking these kind of deep questions. Because some people might actually feel like really uncomfortable answering these. So you gotta make sure that you think before you ask. Like, ask yourself, is this actually a good question to ask? Will this other person become uncomfortable? And you can actually say that, I highly advise this, like, you don't have to answer if you don't want to. Like, you can actually tell them this, that if you don't feel comfortable, don't answer it. That's it. Like, you don't have to answer if you don't want to. Now, I'm not going to give you some examples of these deep questions because the point is that you have to find these kind of deep questions yourself. You gotta ask the deep questions that you actually want to know about someone. Like, if I just give you some deep questions to ask people, it's not going to be as effective as if you thought about those deep questions that you actually want to know about someone. So it's much more effective if you think about some deep questions that you want to ask someone. So as an actionable step, within the next 24 hours, think about a deep question that you want to ask someone and actually ask them. I'm putting these actionable steps in my videos so that you will actually take something away from my video. Because for me at least, like, for a long time, I just used to like watch these videos and just forget them 20 minutes later. So these actionable steps like really help you to take action, and it will like stick. This lesson will stick with you if you actually done something about it. So you can do this actionable step, asking someone a deep question within the next 24 hours. And you can leave a comment like, how did that go? I'm actually very interested. So if you're interested, and also if you're interested, I'm doing free one-on-one calls. If you have any questions, you can send an email to me and we'll arrange a call. And I'm very happy to answer any questions that you have. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. I hope that this was valuable for you. I hope that you learned something new. All the love towards you. Have a great day and goodbye.